Hey there. Welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 320. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is primarily some new DC Superpowers collection from McFarlane Toys. So if you're watching this video, you're probably familiar with this line. But basically, in the 80s, when I was a kid, the kind of first and only DC toy line that was around, at least until the Batman movie came out and everything, like 89, 90, was the DC Superpowers collection from Kenner, which was a really cool line. Not only did it feature all the main DC characters that everybody knows, but it also had some obscure characters like Red Tornado and the New Gods. So that's how I was introduced to a lot of those characters for the first time when I was a kid. Anyway, I didn't have a lot of Kenner Superpowers when I was a kid, but I really liked those toys. I've acquired a few of them over the years. They still look great. The play features are fun. It was a really cool line. So when McFarlane Toys took over the DC license a couple of years ago, initially they started putting out these 7-inch action figures, and they're decent. Some are better than others, but I decided I wasn't really going to dive into collecting McFarlane's DC line, and it's really because I'd been collecting the previous line of DC figures put out by companies like Mattel and DC Direct, and I thought I had a pretty complete line of all the action figures that I really needed. Sure, there was a couple of standouts that I would still buy today if McFarlane made them because DC Direct never did. But for the most part, I didn't need any more Batmans and Supermans and Wonder Woman and all that sort of stuff. But then McFarlane roped me in when they decided to launch their own version of the Kenner Superpowers line. So they're still doing their regular 7-inch multiverse figures, but then they also started doing these more like 4.5, 5-inch figures in the same style as the retro 80s Superpowers figures. And I love them. It's just they're simple, their articulation is pretty limited. It matches exactly like what we had in the 80s. So yeah, some people might think, well, wouldn't you rather the larger, more detailed, more articulated figures? And generally, yes, when it comes to Marvel Legends that you can see behind me, I like the bigger detailed figures. When it comes to G.I. Joe, I really like the new classified line with the bigger, more detailed figures. And maybe if I didn't have any of those DC Direct figures from a few years ago, I would be buying more of McFarlane's stuff. But yeah, there's something about these little retro styled Superpowers figures that I just find so charming, and I've been on board. Not quite a completist. I have reviewed some of these figures before, so if you want to see my reviews of Wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can find those kind of scattered throughout my channel. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Waves 6 and 7, which I almost bought in their entirety. I don't know if there's just... Every wave there seems to be one or two figures that I tend to skip, and those are generally because they're duplicates. McFarlane's been going back to the well a lot, using the same molds over and over and over again. Like, he's already given us 2 Robins, 2 Nightwings, 2 Wonder Woman. I don't know how many Batman and Superman already, but there's a lot. So those are the characters that I tend to skip. So just before we dive into the figures that I did buy, I'll quickly talk about the figures that I didn't and why I didn't. So there was a Batman repaint, which they call the Batman of Ur-N-R or something like that. It's like a Batman from another dimension. He's wearing a crazy colored outfit that's purple and yellow and red. And it's kind of this old Golden Age concept that has been brought back into modern comic books, and now he's like a villain character. So at first glance, you might just think this is a goofy repaint of Batman, but it actually is supposed to be kind of like an evil Batman from another universe or something. And anyway, maybe someday I'll read those comic books and I will regret not buying this figure because I'll think, wow, that Batman of Ur-N-R is really cool. But for me, it's hard not to see it as just a goofy colored Batman, and I don't need it. So I passed on that one. Also in these waves, they did a Batman in the kind of standard gray and blue colors, except they were very muted. Like, I already have a gray and blue Batman in the Superpowers line, and this one, the colors were just a little more dull. And I guess it was based off of how he's colored in some of the Batman, like, manga or something. So it was like a Japanese-inspired Batman. I didn't feel I needed that. I've never read any of the manga, and it's too similar to a figure I already have. So I didn't bother with it. And then the other figure that came out that I passed on was a version of Flash, and he was painted gold instead of his traditional red. Now, I've never seen Flash in gold. I don't really have any attachment to that look. It just seemed to be something McFarlane just kind of pulled out of thin air. And not that it looked bad, but I already have a standard red Flash, and I have the same figure basically painted over in yellow to be the reverse Flash. And Flash just isn't a character that I felt I don't need this gold one. However, I might come to regret that one too, which I'll talk about a little bit more when I start showing you the figures that I did buy. So yeah, those are the ones I didn't buy. Also, there's a couple of vehicles that I'm going to talk about in this video. So for example, I recently got Wonder Woman's invisible jet, which is actually from one of the earlier waves, and I had passed on it, but now I picked it up. But from one of these current waves, I got Brainiac's skull ship. And along with this one, there was also, there's no pictures of it on the box, but it was Blue Beetle's, like, Beetle ship, or the bug, whatever they call it. And I think they might show it. Here's the packaging for these figures. Nice retro style packaging. You got the unique character artwork on the side. I've cut the blister, like the bubble, off of the card here. But on the back, you see the cross promotion with all the other figures. And there is the Blue Beetle's bug ship. It was really cool. Maybe I'll pick it up eventually. But I had it in my hands. I decided to put it down just because I don't really have a whole lot of room. One of the things I like about this collection is that the figures are small and I can display a lot of them on a shelf. But when you start adding all these vehicles to the collection, such as the two I just showed you, plus I already have a Bat plane and a Superman plane, it just starts taking up a lot of room. So Blue Beetle's not a character that I have a ton of attachment to, so I decided to pass on his vehicle for now. But anyway, so with that all out of the way, now we can take a look at the figures I did buy. But I also want to mention, I am going to review a couple other figures from another company in this video, because I only have 3 of these figures. There was a whole wave of them, but I only bought 3. And it just didn't feel like enough figures to review on their own, in their own video. And they're done in the same style as the Kenner Superpowers figures. So you can kind of mix these figures into your superpowers, and that's what I intend to do. I'm going to display them all over here on my shelf together. And those are the Longbox Hero figures. And this is like a collaboration between Fresh Monkey Fiction and Toy Otter. And so what they've done here is they've taken a bunch of independent comic book characters, such as here, this is the packaging for Madman, who is a Mike Allred creation. But you'll see the cross promotion on the back there. There's a bunch of characters like the Tick and the Rocketeer. So characters that aren't really connected in any sort of comic book universe. That's why it's got just kind of this generic name of Longbox Heroes. And this is a really great line. I bought some of these last year. I was really impressed. So when this new series launched this year, I was excited to at least pick up a few of them, and I might go back for a few more a little bit later. But anyway, that's enough of this stuff. Why don't we dive in and take a closer look at these figures? So first up, we'll take a look at the Green Lantern. Now this is the Hal Jordan version of Green Lantern, who is, I would say, by far the most well-known. He is my favorite Green Lantern. He's not the original. Alan Scott came first. Maybe we'll get a figure of him eventually. I wouldn't be surprised. And Hal Jordan is a member of the Green Lantern Corps, which is like an intergalactic space force. So even though he has been assigned the sector with Earth in it, he does have a lot of cosmic adventures. But when there's a really big cosmic threat, he needs to go into space and team up with all the other Green Lanterns, of which there are sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds. And so yeah, lots of guys, all with the name Green Lantern. So yeah, we'll just call this guy Hal for now. And yeah, it's a nice figure. Very simple, very basic. Now, Hal Jordan's costume has gone through a few minor tweaks over the years, but this design that you see here, this is probably one of his most classic designs, and this is the one that he was wearing in the vintage Kenner Superpowers line. So the fact that it's, the green boots, the white gloves, the shorts are green, that whole look there, it matches the vintage figure. The colors are a little darker in this one as compared to the vintage, which I don't have for comparison, so I'll just have to put in an image here for you to see. But yeah, it's a pretty solid figure. I really like the packaging on this guy. Some of the card art is better than others on these. I prefer when they use the classic artwork as opposed to the more modern stuff. And at a glance, this definitely looks like retro artwork. I would guess maybe it's Neil Adams who had a pretty famous run on Green Lantern. It just looks like a nice classic Green Lantern. The costume on the card matches the figure as I think it should, and it just looks really sharp. Now I'm just going to back things up a little bit here so I can bring in for comparison. I have a few Hal Jordan figures in my collection, but this one here is probably the most classic looking Hal Jordan that I have from DC Direct. Now this guy here, you can see the costume matches pretty closely. He has the long white gloves, the long green boots. But this guy here, he doesn't really have the green shorts. The green kind of stops around his belt line. But otherwise, pretty much the same thing. Now, I really love the metallic green paint that DC Direct used on this guy. It looks really, really nice. Really nice head sculpt on this guy. But this guy here, for being such a simple, basic figure, I think he retains a lot of that detail. And to be honest, that DC Direct figure was not very articulated itself. Not much more so than this guy. So, yeah, this guy is a nice little version. So yeah, you can see he's got his one hand here sculpted in a fist with his ring showing. His other hand, he's got kind of an open gripping hand because he has this Green Lantern accessory. He bends at the knees. No bends at the elbows. That's pretty standard for all of these Superpowers figures. But a nice little sculpt, a nice little paint job. I really like the head sculpt here. He's got the little swirl in his hair and everything. Like, it looks like Hal. And yeah, I wouldn't really change anything about this figure except maybe getting that kind of metallic paint would be nice. But another thing that's a little strange, and I don't know if all the Green Lanterns have to have necessarily the same shade of green, but in an earlier wave, we got this version of Green Lantern, which is John. And yeah, you can see here his green is quite a bit brighter than Hal's. So, it's just if I'm eventually going to build a whole squad of these guys, I'd kind of like all the greens to match up. I just think it would look a little bit better. But anyway, it is what it is. Now, I don't have a whole lot more to say about Hal, but I'll keep him around for a moment to talk about the next figure. So this here is another one of the famous members of the Green Lantern Corps, and this here is Kilowog. Now, this guy is kind of like the Green Lantern drill sergeant. He trains new recruits. And this is a big figure. Now, he was the same price as the other guys, which is nice. But you can see when I stand him up here, he's substantially larger. I don't know if he's maybe too large. I have read a lot of Green Lantern comics. He is perhaps maybe my favorite DC character. I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I'd say it's maybe been my most consistent favorite DC comic. I'm much more of a Marvel guy, and when I collect runs of DC characters, they're often for just a storyline here or there. There have been very few DC characters where I've collected a long run, but I collected about a decade or more of Green Lantern consistently. He just had one great creator after another, starting with Jeff Johns. It was a really good run. So anyway, I would like to get all the different characters from the Green Lantern Corps, but Kilowog is a nice one. And yeah, what I was saying there, where I bought all those comic books, I don't remember Kilowog being necessarily this big. There's probably examples of him being even bigger than this, but there's probably examples of him being more the same height as Hal. Like, I have no doubt that he should be muscular. He should be a lot thicker. And yeah, a little bit taller, but this one I feel is maybe a smidge too tall. I don't know. But what's interesting, his green, I don't know if you're picking it up, but his green seems to match Hal's much closer, which is almost a little bit more annoying. I would, if his was a third type of green, I could deal with that more, and I would just say, okay, every Green Lantern from every different sector gets a different shade of green. Maybe that's a designation of some sort. But when you have these two guys with the same green, and he's got a different green, and technically these two guys manage the same sector, and he does not, it's just, yeah, I'm curious about the choice of why McFarlane decided to change up the colors. Now, before we zoom in for a closer look at this Kilowog, I'm going to bring in my old DC Direct Kilowog here. You can see this guy. He's a pretty big guy. Can't even fit them all in frame here. but definitely a little bit more detail. You can see all those kind of like cracks in his skin and stuff. It's a nice figure. Not a lot of articulation in him either, really. You see he's got a single jointed elbow, a single jointed knee. Not a lot of range of movement there. They're definitely not built like Marvel Legends. DC Direct was not necessarily known for their articulation. So the fact that the Superpowers figures have very limited articulation as well, it's definitely maybe a step down from the DC Multiverse figures that McFarlane was doing. But since the bulk of my DC figures are DC Direct, the lack of articulation is really not a step down for me at all. It's pretty much on par with what I had in my collection already. So here's a bit of a closer look at Kilowog. And I guess I should mention about his packaging. So again, same style packaging, except the artwork on this one, I'm not as big a fan. Like, there's nothing wrong with the art itself. But it is not, like, I can't recognize immediately who did it, and it doesn't look immediately like Kilowog. Like, you notice he has those kind of jowls. That's usually how he's drawn. And in the artwork here, it doesn't really seem like he has those jowls. So, yeah, it just doesn't really seem to match up as nicely as, say, the Hal Jordan. So, that's not really here nor there. If I had a gripe about this figure, it would probably be the fact that he does not have a lantern. You saw both of my other Green Lanterns had a lantern. So, maybe with Kilowog, they thought, well, we're giving them a substantially more plastic for the same price because the figure's so large. So for that reason, we're not going to give them a lantern. And I understand that. But again, if I end up building an army of these guys over time, it'll be a little strange that Kilowog doesn't have a lantern and he doesn't have an open fist, so he's not even able to hold one if I wanted to give him somebody else's lantern. But otherwise, I really like the sculpt. I like the paint job. Simple. It's great. I like it. Now we'll keep things in the world of Green Lantern for a moment, and we'll focus on Green Lantern's, probably his arch nemesis. This would be Sinestro. Now this is a nice figure. This is Sinestro in what I would say is probably a version of his most classic outfit. This is what he wore in the Silver Age, the black outfit with the blue. He had the power of yellow. I guess he always had the yellow power ring. I didn't really read Green Lantern back in the Silver Age, but yeah, this was Sinestro. This guy was a former Green Lantern who had kind of switched sides, and yeah, he's a character, I'll be honest, I never liked. I had never read a comic book with him. I just knew what he looked like. And he was often drawn with a really big, oversized forehead. He's just this pink guy with a little pencil-thin mustache. He seemed like kind of a dork. His costume wasn't particularly cool. So, I don't know, maybe years ago, I wouldn't have even bought this figure when they announced it. Now, I will say this figure looks pretty good. He doesn't have an oversized forehead. You know, he's proportioned well. Sometimes I thought Sinestro was drawn to be rather scrawny. This guy is not. So it's a nice figure, even if I didn't like the character. As far as the artwork on the card, again, I can't pinpoint exactly who this is, but it looks like nice classic Silver Age artwork, and it matches up with the figure pretty nicely. So yeah, I think that's a pretty nice looking card. Now, as I mentioned, I did read Green Lantern pretty regularly, starting with Jeff Johns' run. And I became a big fan of Sinestro. I don't know how menacing a villain he was in the past, but I thought Jeff Johns did a really good job of elevating Sinestro. And even though he might have always had the power of yellow, which is Green Lantern's weakness, it wasn't until Jeff Johns was writing the book that he had Sinestro form his own corps to battle against the entire Green Lantern Corps. So he was no longer just a single guy with a yellow power ring. He became the leader of the Sinestro Corps, and he had a whole crew of aliens and stuff, and he had a whole army, and he destroyed the Green Lantern Corps. It was really, really good stuff. Anyway, so this guy came out in Wave 6, but then in Wave 7, we got the Sinestro Corps version of him, and yeah, to be honest, I don't know. If I get the Sinestro Corps version first, I might not have bought this. I might have thought, maybe not necessary. But when I got this guy first, I kind of knew. I was like, I bet you they're going to repaint this guy probably at least twice. because we're going to get the Yellow Lantern version of him, and then we'll probably get the Green Lantern version of him as well. And I would have been happy to buy the yellow and the green version. I don't know if I would have felt the need to buy the black and blue Silver Age version, but I have it now, and I'm fine with it. They're both nice figures. You can see it looks like they pretty much have the same sculpt. You could maybe be fooled to think that they're a little different because one guy looks like he has a buckle on his belt, the other guy doesn't. You know, this guy's got like kind of a strap on his arm, this guy doesn't. But all those changes are just done with paint. It doesn't look like there's any sculpting differences between the two figures. Now, on the packaging for the yellow Sinestro, it's different artwork, which is nice. This does look like more contemporary art from the era that I was reading Green Lantern, from the era that he actually wore this outfit. So yeah, it's nice art. I'm happy, or I'm fine with it being kind of more contemporary artwork, considering this costume only appeared in kind of more contemporary comic books. So the fact that the Superpowers line is based on a retro concept from the 80s, that's why I like them to go with retro 80s artwork if they can. But yeah, there is no existing kind of retro artwork of Sinestro in his Sinestro core outfit. So yeah, it's fine. Anyway, both these figures are really nice. If I bring them up here for a little bit more detail, you'll see that face sculpt and the paint job. He's got those pointy ears, the widow's peak haircut, the high collar on his shirt there. You know, nice crisp detail on his logo. He has got a yellow lantern, which it differs from Hal Jordan's lantern. You'll see Hal's got a different one there. But I think Sinestro's might be just... no, it actually is different now that I'm looking at it, because John's doesn't have a handle on it the way Sinestro's does. So they're similar. It might be mostly the same mold, but slightly tweaked to give the handle a different shape. So that's cool. And both Sinestros carry the same lantern. But yeah, it's a cool figure. I like this character. And I will definitely buy another version, because if I zoom out here, the only Sinestro I have in my collection, or had in my collection prior to these guys, was this one from DC Direct. Here you can see they've given him kind of that larger forehead, which sometimes he's portrayed with a really long forehead. This is about as big as I can handle it without him starting to look a little ridiculous. I prefer him in the Superpowers look, with this head being kind of normal shaped. But again, this guy's got that metallic green, the same metallic green that my Hal Jordan had. It looks really nice. I think he looks really cool in this outfit. So I hope that they repaint this figure again and give us the Green Lantern version. But yeah, otherwise, let's move on to the next guy. So next up, let's take a look at Justice Lord Superman. This was from Wave 6. And if you've seen my past reviews of these Superpowers figures, I absolutely love the Superpowers He-Man. There's something about this sculpt. I just love that face, like the squareness of his jaw. Like, I have a lot of Superman figures, and sometimes it's just hard to get the perfect look. I think this Superman face is better than any of the Superman faces McFarlane has done in the 7-inch multiverse line. He has done a lot of different versions of Superman, but I find they all look a little off. I don't think he's done the perfect Superman yet. But when it comes to the Superpowers line, I don't think that's a problem at all. I think he's done basically a perfect Superman. I love it. So the packaging on this guy, I don't know anything about this outfit, by the way. So similar to where I mentioned before, they've done a couple of Batmans that I passed on because he had some crazy outfit I wasn't familiar with. This Superman could have maybe easily fallen into that category too, except for the fact that I absolutely adore this sculpt. I've already bought the Superman twice prior to this, and I would buy it again. I think it's a really nice figure. I just was not familiar with this look. Now, the packaging says that this is Justice Lord Superman, and he is from an alternate universe where the Justice League, I think, are bad guys, which is nothing new. We've seen that before. But this particular outfit, we haven't seen. Now, the artwork on the packaging, I don't love it, because you can tell that it is not from a comic book of showing this character. They've taken some artwork of a regular Superman and recolored it in these colors, and it just looks a little off. Now, where this is a contemporary look, it probably would have affected the retroness of the card if they had taken some modern artwork. So I think this look just appeared like in the last 2 or 3 years. So it will be very kind of contemporary artwork. But I would rather them do that than take some kind of retro art and recolor it badly. It just doesn't look right. But anyway, packaging, not a big deal. I love the figure. So let me zoom out a little bit here. And for a comparison, I will bring out the first Superman. Again, I love this guy. I just thought he was perfect. Now, his eyes are maybe a little weird where it's just those blue dots. But to me, that kind of just added to the charm of these figures. Although they did kind of improve that with the second release for the new 52 version of Superman. But yeah, I just think this is a great figure. I love it. And so with this guy here, it's the same. I don't think they've changed anything. Like the boots, you'll see he's got those boots with that kind of distinct trim on the boots. This guy does not have the same painted wise, but you can see that they're still sculpted that way. So they just kind of hit it with the paint. But really, it's just the same figure painted differently. Now, the cape is another thing that they improved. This one here feels a little rigid. Like there was a tack in this one, or like a little twist tie in the packaging, and you can see how it left a perfect hole through it. This material feels like kind of a ribbon that you would put on a present or something. Like it's kind of just kind of weird and rigidy, almost like paper. Whereas this is a much softer flowing cape, and I think you could probably poke a hole through that and it would kind of almost like seal itself up again. So yeah, this is a much nicer cape. I love the way that the capes clip on. It's just like the retro line. It's just kind of a piece of wire that holds its shape there, so you can just pull that right off. There's no clips or snaps. There's no holes. It doesn't peg in anywhere. It's just the wire kind of holds it in shape there, and I think it works quite effectively. This Superman is obviously supposed to be a little bit older. He's got the gray hair at the temples there. It's a great look. So yeah, even though I was not familiar with this Lords of Power Superman, I haven't read the comic books that featured this outfit. I just think it's a really cool outfit. So as opposed to the Batman of Ur&R, whose outfit is silly, this outfit is cool. So yeah, I was happy to get it. Now, while we've got Superman here, let's jump into our next figure. So this here is Gold Superman. So again, we have the exact same figure. Same boots with the trim, all that stuff. And now he's just painted in gold. So this is my fourth version of Superman, the exact same sculpt. And here you can see what I'm talking about with the improved eyes. So he still has those blue dots, but the fact that they kind of gave the upper eye kind of a black line, it makes it look a little bit more human, not quite just cartoony as just the two blue dots. So yeah, this is a great looking figure. He's got the nicer cape, so it's smoother, and that gold just looks really sharp. Now, you might be thinking, well, what did you need a gold Superman for? And I didn't, but this is one of those nice little nods. I love when toy companies go back and give us a toy from the past. Like this whole line is based on nostalgia. But it's quite well known that there was supposed to be additional waves of figures in the Retro Kenner Superpowers line. There are websites devoted to showing you all the prototypes and the concept art for the figures that were going to come next. And in the next wave of Retro Superpowers figures that did not get produced was this gold Superman. And the reason he was gold is because it was Superman's 50th anniversary at the time. So, which would have been 1987 or 86 or 87 or something. So yeah, they wanted to do this 50th anniversary figure, but the line got canceled. This gold Superman never happened, but fans knew that it should have happened or almost happened. So even though we're well past Superman's 50th anniversary at this point, the fact that McFarlane decided to give us this figure, it's a win-win, because for him, it's an easy repaint. He can milk some more money out of us using the same figure. But for a lot of fans that collected the retro line, I'm sure this is pretty thrilling to finally get this figure in hand. And I was pretty excited to see that they were doing a gold Superman. Now, the packaging on this guy, they actually just used some some classic retro Superman artwork, but they kept it in the blue and red, which is kind of interesting. Now, it might have looked a little silly had they painted it gold, because again, he never appeared that way in the comic books. But it does seem a little strange that when you see the front of the package and you see a red and blue Superman, and then you've got a gold Superman in the packaging, I kind of think they maybe should have tweaked the artwork there. But no matter. It's a cool Superman, and I will continue to buy it no matter what color they paint it. Now I'm going to keep gold Superman on hand here for a moment to display with my next figure. So this is one of the Batmans I did buy. So I already have 3 or 4 Batman from this line. I have the classic blue and gray. I have the black kind of Tim Burton movie version. I have the Thomas Wayne version of Batman. Anyway, so now I have the gold Batman. So this is a repaint of the kind of the black Tim Burton, Michael Keaton Batman figure that we got a couple of waves ago. And they've just repainted him in gold instead of black. And he looks pretty great. Now, it was not Batman's 50th anniversary or anything like that when this figure was produced, but they did make a gold Batman figure that looked almost exactly like this back in the kind of early 90s when there was still a bunch of hype around the first Batman movie. And I wasn't collecting any of the Kenner Batman figures, but my little brother was. And he had a few of these Batmans. He had the regular black Batman with the kind of the rope belt, and he had the yellow Batman in these kind of like neon yellow colors, and he had this gold Batman. So I remember handling this gold Batman. I remember it seen around the house. And so when I saw that they were re-releasing this gold Batman, it made me nostalgic for a toy I didn't even really own. But I think it's really cool to get these kind of throwback figures. It's just cool. Now, on the packaging, they've done the same thing with Batman as they did with Superman, in that they just have some retro artwork. And again, this looks like it's probably Neil Adams artwork, but he's just wearing his classic gray and blue. So it does not match the figure on the card. Maybe they should have recolored this, gold and black. I don't know. But I do like that it has kind of this retro card. There really wasn't an option to pull actual artwork from a comic book where he's wearing this outfit, because as far as I know, neither of these guys have ever worn these gold outfits in the comic books. And I am noticing, looking at the card, that both Superman and Batman have a little gold label at the top that says Gold Edition 40th Anniversary. So I guess they're stating it's the 40th anniversary of the Superpowers line, not necessarily the 40th anniversary of Superman or Batman, or the gold Batman from the Batman movie. It's the 40th anniversary, I guess, of a vintage line. So that's interesting that they only put it on the gold figures. But anyway, this is partly why I was saying that I might regret not getting the gold Flash. Because to me, there was a reason to get both of these figures. This one for nostalgic reasons, because I had it at my house when I was a kid. This one because it's based on a prototype figure that we never got in the 80s. But as far as I know, a gold Flash was not scheduled. Maybe it was. But anyway, the fact that I have these two guys in gold, if they make a gold Green Lantern sometime down the line, since I'm a bigger Green Lantern fan than I am a Flash fan, I would probably buy the gold Green Lantern. And then what next? Then I'm going to get a gold Wonder Woman. And then I'll probably be kicking myself for saying, like, well, now I've got a whole gold Justice League, except I missed out on the gold Flash. So if they only do Flash and no other characters in gold, I'm fine with not having the gold Flash, because it would have been just a weird little trio anyway. But I kind of get the feeling they're probably going to do all the main characters in gold. I'm probably going to end up buying at least a couple more of them, and then that will make me wish I had all of them. So anyway, now before I move on, I'm just going to bring out the previous Michael Keaton Batman for comparison. So this is a different sculpt than the other Batmans that they've given us, like the blue and gray Batman. This one is unique to the movie look, and this is the first time they've repainted this Batman into this gold, which makes sense because the retro gold figure was just a repaint of the black figure from the 90s, or from 1990. So yeah, it's a cool figure. I like him. He's got a kind of a soft goods cape as well. It's of the nicer material. It's not that wrapping paper type of material. It just clips onto his neck with the wire too, and I think it fits pretty snug. Like you could argue that it could maybe be a little snugger, but no, it works for me. I like these capes. It's got that nice kind of little fringe there and everything. It's pretty cool. So next up, we've got the Blue Beetle. Now this is the kind of classic Silver Age Blue Beetle, which is Ted Cord. It is not the more modern Blue Beetle that we recently got a live action movie of. I believe his name is Jamie Reyes, that character. I will probably get that one eventually. But given the retro nature of the Superpowers line, I'm glad they went with the retro version of Blue Beetle. I prefer this version. Yeah, there's just something kind of old timey about him. He looks like a classic kind of hero from the 40s or something. And yeah, he's just cool. I like him. And this is my first ever Blue Beetle figure. Like, I like Blue Beetle, but I am not a diehard fan, so I have not bought any previous versions from DC Direct or Mattel or any of the other companies that would have produced them. Like McFarlane himself did a couple of versions based on the new movie. I didn't buy any of those. So yeah, it's kind of fun. Even though I've been a toy collector since pretty much my entire life, and I have thousands of action figures. When you get a character like this, who you've never had in your collection before, it's kind of fun, kind of refreshing, and it's a cool costume. I like that nice thick black line that separates the two blues there. That looks really good. I love the kind of goggles. Yeah, a really cool figure. No accessories or anything with this guy, which is okay, I guess, but they probably could have given him something. As far as the artwork goes, I don't recognize it, but it looks retro enough. The costume matches up. It looks good, so I like the packaging. Now I do kind of regret not getting the Beetle ship. If we bring in the packaging here, you can see there's the Blue Beetle's bug ship. Now you could set the characters in those two eyes, so there was two seats in the front. So they've already announced the next wave of these figures is going to have Booster Gold, which is Blue Beetle's kind of partner. So you can put each of them in the two seats, and then the back wings of the Beetle kind of open up. And it was a really cool looking ship, and really not that expensive either. It was about $40 Canadian, which I think was totally worth it. But again, it's just space is becoming an issue, and I already don't know where I'm going to put all these vehicles. Now, the Brainiac Skull Ship, this was something I couldn't really resist because, like the Gold Superman, this was a toy that we almost got in the vintage toy line, but then it got canceled. So all we ever saw were concept drawings. So I love that McFarlane made the skull ship and kept the original designs from the 80s concept art. Very cool. So maybe we'll take a look at that next. So here is the skull ship box. Relatively small, but it's a striking box. I really love the colors on these Superpowers, the cards as well as the boxes. I am not somebody that keeps many of my boxes. I do keep most of the blister cards for my action figures, whether it's G.I. Joe or reaction figures. I cut the bubbles off, and they don't take up that much room to store otherwise. But boxes, it becomes a real pain in the ass to store these things. I just don't have room for these boxes. But when it comes to these Superpowers vehicles, I have kept all of the boxes so far for my Batwing and my Supermobile, because I'm wondering if perhaps I can find a way to display them with my figures. Maybe I can put it on a shelf and stand figures on top of the box or something, because they just look so nice. Anyway, so on the back of the box there, you see that it says it seats one figure and that the legs move when rolled. So there was some assembly required when I got this thing. You just basically had to snap all the legs in place. And there it is. This thing is simple and it looks awesome. There's Brainiac inside. We'll talk about him in a minute. But yeah, when you roll this ship along, you see the tentacles they make a little bit of a noise and they move back and forth. It's the kind of thing I would have absolutely loved as a kid. It's simple. It's very true to the line. The vintage figures all had a little action feature. So when you, like, say, squeeze the figure's arms together, his legs would kick, or if you squeeze his legs together, the arms would punch. So the fact that the little legs on the ship move when you roll across the floor, that's very retro superpowers. And there was a Brainiac figure in the vintage line. Most of these characters I've shown you, whether it's Kilowog or even Sinestro, the Blue Beetle, none of those characters appeared in the vintage Kenner line. Brainiac did, and I actually have the Brainiac figure here, but this was based on the kind of robotic version of Brainiac. So he's like completely robotic here. He's got this kind of clear dome, so you can see his brain through there, which is a pretty cool, menacing, very Terminator-like version of Brainiac. And so you can understand, since this was the figure that we had in the 80s, why the Skull Ship would match. And you can just imagine this guy kind of rolling around in his own version of the ship. Now, I don't know, would they have made the vintage one vac metal to match the figure? That would have been pretty cool. But anyway, I'm guessing that McFarlane will probably give us a new version of this Brainiac at some point. But for now, they gave us this classic kind of Silver Age version of Brainiac. And it's completely goofy, but I love it. It's a lot of fun. Like, he's got his white go-go boots, his little black booty shorts, the long sleeve pink shirt with the white collar. Like, it's crazy that somebody designed this guy to be a supervillain and thought this would be a tough look, but it is what it is. You grow up with these things when you're a kid. You don't usually question it. You're like, yeah, sure, that's what a supervillain would wear. And I just kind of love how goofy it is. So the sculpt is nice. The colors really pop. I love the green skin on this guy. So yeah, really cool figure, really cool vehicle. Now, one thing that I'm a little torn about is that I have seen that they've released a second version of this as a deluxe pack. So I had to buy these two figures separate, which I guess I'll mention about the packaging for Sinestro in that, or Brainiac here, not Sinestro. But the packaging's nice. Again, I can't really pinpoint the artist or anything, but it does look like kind of classic 80s artwork, the type of artwork that would appear on a retro Kenner figure. So it's nice. It doesn't quite match up because it looks like he's wearing pink shorts and he's got pink boots on the artwork. So I don't know. That seems like kind of a strange choice. Maybe they could have had that match up a little bit better, but no matter. But anyway, so there's another version of the ship, which is part of McFarlane's Gold label, and it's an exclusive. I'm not sure where it's exclusive to. I haven't seen it anywhere. I buy most of these figures at GameStop. But you can get this ship in green and purple, and it looks like it does have some vac metal elements, or at the very least some kind of metallic paint. And then you get another version of Brainiac, because there are multiple versions of Brainiac from different timelines. So there's this guy, there's the robotic guy, there's a guy that's a hero, and he's from the future, and then there's another version that comes with this green and purple metallic version of the ship. Now, I'm not really familiar with every different version of Brainiac. The version that comes with the Gold label ship, I don't really have any attachment to it. The ship, if I was going to get one of the two, I would get the gray one because that's kind of more how I associate the Skull Ship. But the green and purple one does look really nice. And if I do run into that set, I will probably pick it up. I don't know. That remains to be seen. I'm not going out of my way to hunt for it. That's why I don't know off the top of my head what store it's exclusive to. But yeah, if the opportunity comes along, I might pick it up eventually. But anyway, let's move on to the next vehicle. So here we have Wonder Woman's invisible jet, is how they describe it. Now, you'll see on the back, it's got a couple of action features as well. It says that the canopy opens, it's got a little capture claw, and it seats one figure. Again, I love the little box. I love the invisible plane. Like, they don't actually show the toy on the front. It's kind of this artwork of an invisible plane. Yeah, it's pretty neat. But I do recall Wonder Woman having an invisible jet in various different types of media, whether it be the cartoons or the comic books. And I think it was usually drawn as an actual jet. This is more like, I don't know, an escape pod or something. It's very small and compact. But I'm fine with that, because if they wanted to make this like an invisible F-14 or something, it would have been huge, and they probably would have charged me $100 for it, and I would never would have bought it. But for this, it was only like $30 or $25 or something, and it's cute. It allows me to have Wonder Woman's invisible jet, and it's just fun. I like it. So here it is outside of the packaging. Now this jet, as I mentioned in my intro, this was from an earlier wave. It was not a part of wave 6 or 7 like all of these figures I'm showing you. But when this had come out, I had initially passed on it. I kind of hummed and hawed. I did want it. I did think it was cool, but I was kind of wrestling with the space issue and how many vehicles is this going to end up being, because in the early days, I kind of thought the Superpowers line was going to be kind of a flash in the pan and short-lived. So I bought the Batplane and the Supermobile, kind of just because I thought they were going to be funny little things to add to my collection. But then they went ahead and they did a Batmobile, which I didn't buy, and they did a Bat helicopter that I didn't buy, and now they've done the Blue Beetle ship. Like, there seems like there's going to be no end to these vehicles, and I really don't have the room. So I kind of said, I got to chill out and stop buying these vehicles. The reason I did eventually buy this is because I was buying something on GameStop's website a couple of weeks ago, and their website's kind of weird. Some things you can buy on their website and say ship to my nearest store. And if they do that, then you don't have to pay any shipping charges. You can just pick it up at the store. Sometimes you can say ship it to my home, and that's the only option they have. They say you can ship this item to your house, but you can't ship it to the store. I don't know why. And in which case, then you have to pay for shipping. Unless you buy more than $75 worth of stuff, then you get free shipping. So I believe it was the new Marvel Legends Ghost Rider with his motorcycle that I was buying on their website the day it came out, but it was only like $60, and it was only available to ship to my house, not ship to the store. So they were going to charge me like $15 to ship the thing to my house, and I was like, well, I only need to spend $15 more on another toy, and then the shipping will be free. So I'll be spending the same amount of money and getting more stuff. So I went to their website and I'm like, is there anything else on the website that I don't currently own, that I currently want? And a lot of things I like were already sold out, or a lot of things I already have. So this plane, or this jet, was still there, and it was about $25. So I ended up spending a little bit, like $10 more than I needed to. But then the shipping was free. And then what's odd is that this thing is in stock already, so they shipped it to me and I had it in a matter of days. But the Ghost Rider isn't due out for another month or two. So it seems a little nonsensical that they made me buy the two items to get the free shipping, because they're shipping them separately and I get free shipping on both. But anyway, so here's the plane. So as you can see, it is it's not visible, obviously, but it's nice and clear. It's all cast in this translucent plastic, so you can see all the inner workings. It has the Wonder Woman logo, the W's on the front, and if you hit that, then the cockpit pops open. Just click that back closed. On the bottom, there's this kind of grappling hook. You just pop that out of place. There you go. And you can kind of open that up, so you could put that around somebody's wrists. So that dangles pretty good. And let's see, maybe we can capture. Yeah. We'll get Brainiac here. So Brainiac's been captured. You can tow him along like this. And then when you want to retract him, you pull this thing here, you move it back or forward, and you see this thing pulled right back up. Now, it happened to drop Brainiac on the way, but yeah, so you pull this and it retracts the rope. And then you can kind of tuck this out of the way by just folding up like that. And that's pretty cool. So fun little action features, again, the kind of thing I would have loved as a kid. Now, these vehicles don't typically come with characters. This one did not. Thankfully, I already have a Wonder Woman. I don't love this Wonder Woman figure. I hope we get a better version sometime down the road, but thankfully I had this one in the meantime, and she can plop into her plane like so, and there you go. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, so I've shown you all of my new Superpowers figures, but as I mentioned in the intro, I want to show you a couple of my Longbox Hero figures from Fresh Monkey Fiction. These guys are super cool too. They are done in the same style as the Superpowers. So I'm going to bring Superman out here as a comparison. Now, there's a toy company called Boss Fight Studios that I'm a big fan of. They do lots of nice work. And they have their own line called, I think, Power Stars is what they call it. And that's got some kind of retro pulpy heroes too. So they've done figures in the same style of Flash Gordon and who else was it? Maybe Tarzan or something. I don't think Tarzan. It was somebody. Anyway, I only bought one of their prior figures, and that was the Phantom. So you can see he's got articulated knees, no articulated elbows. He's done in that same style, and when you display him next to Superman, he looks like he's from the same toy line. So that's very cool that these companies are all kind of doing the same thing. It all works together. Similarly, Fresh Monkey Fiction put out a whole line of Rocketeer figures last year, which I bought the entire line, which consisted of the Rocketeer and a bunch of villains and some henchmen and all that sort of stuff. It was a very cool set. And again, same style, articulated knees, no articulation on the elbows, limited accessories, kind of limited sculpts, but really, really nice. And you can see that these guys all work really well together. You could definitely play with all these guys, display them as part of the same collection. I like all these a lot. So anyway, when I got the whole Rocketeer collection, that convinced me that I definitely needed to pre-order some of the figures from their next collection, which ended up being a number of independent characters. So if we bring in the back of the blister card here, you can get a closer look. So on the bottom there, you'll see a lot of the henchmen from the Rocketeer collection, which I previously reviewed. So you get your Badlands Trooper, your Onslaught Trooper, things like that. You've got the Rocketeer. Here's the Black Phantom, which was kind of an evil version of the Rocketeer. And then the newer wave had all these other characters. So you got Madman, Tick, the Goon, Grendel. And as I mentioned earlier, these guys are all from different comic book universes, all by different comic book creators. Most of these characters have never crossed over with one another, but it's just really cool to kind of lump them all together because there have been Madman figures in the past, and there have been Cassie Hack figures from Hack Slash, but they would have been all different scales, and they wouldn't necessarily match up with anything else in your collection. So if you're like me, I think most collectors would like all their toys to be able to intermingle to some degree. That's another reason why McFarlane's multiverse figures kind of bum me out, because they're 7 inches, which is just a little bit too tall to hang out with my Marvel Legends or my G.I. Joe Classified or my Star Wars Black Series. So yeah, I like my toys to fit together. So that's why I love that even though these are from 3 different companies, it looks like they're all from the same company. And I like that they're mixing all those independent comic book creations together. Because I would love to get some Hellboy figures in this style. Now, there's enough characters in Hellboy that they could probably do their own line. But if we just got, say, Hellboy and Abe Sapien, and they were included in the Longbox Heroes line, I'd be pretty stoked about that too. So anyway, these are all toys that I already had. So now let's talk about my new ones. So first up is Madman. I'll get these guys out of the way, perhaps. So Madman is a character from Mike Allred. Now, I think I was first introduced to this guy probably in the Mallrats movie. It's been a long time since I've seen that, but I think they use a lot of the Madman and Mike Allred artwork. I think Mike Allred actually appears in the movie at a scene where they're at the comic book convention. Anyway, so clearly Kevin Smith is a fan or a friend of Mike Allred. Anyway, so that was my introduction to this character. And I knew he existed for a long time when I was young, but I was such a Marvel zombie when I was a kid. I didn't really have the money or the interest in looking up some of these independent books. It wasn't until years later, when I was maybe in my late teens or even early 20s, that I finally decided to check out things like Hellboy and Madman. And yeah, these Madman comic books were a blast. I love this character. He might not look like much, like it's a pretty simple design, but he's a really fun character, and the artwork is just gorgeous. I'm a huge fan of Mike Allred's work. And yeah, this guy looks great. The artwork on the card is nice. It's clearly Mike Allred's artwork, so if you like what you're seeing here, go check out some Madman comic books. You see there, he's got like a yo-yo that he uses as a weapon. And it's really striking package with that, kind of bright blue with the white character in front of it. It just looks really good. On the back of the packaging, it gives you a little bit of a write-up of the character and also shows you some artwork from some of the various issues of the comic book. Anyway, it's really cool. It's really nice packaging. Now with the other figures from Boss Fight Studios, their packaging almost mimics the Superpowers line exactly. Like it's got the same colors. It's the blue, yellow, and red, and everything like that. I like that the Longbox Heroes kind of went their own way with it. Um, it makes them look a little bit more unique, and yeah, they're just really nice cards, really nice figures. I'm very impressed with because this is a pretty small company. They haven't got a ton of figures under their belt, and some of the figures they have produced in the past, I don't think were anywhere near as good as this. So they've definitely come a long way. So yeah, not much to say about the articulation or anything. They move the same as any of the Superpowers figures, dating all the way back to the retro ones. But yeah, it's all about the sculpt and the paintwork, and I have zero complaints in that department. He looks great. So that's Madman. Now maybe we'll move on to the one I'm kind of least impressed about, I'm sorry to say. But this here is Cassie Hack from the comic book Hack Slash. The concept of that being is she is kind of the if you're a horror movie fan, there's kind of the concept of the final girl, which is usually the girl that survives the slasher at the end of the movie. So Cassie here is kind of the final girl, and she pairs up with a slasher, kind of a Jason Voorhees type character, and they team up and they go out and they hunt other slashers. It's a really cool concept, but I never thought the comic book ever quite lived up to it. It always had nice artwork, but I thought the storylines were kind of lacking and seemed a little repetitive. And sometimes it was a little too goofy, like it was a little too comedic and not nearly as dark as I maybe would have liked it. Anyway, but I really do like the character of Cassie Hack, and I think it's Tim Seeley that created the book. I want to say that he wrote and drew it in the early days. I could be wrong on that, but anyway, the artwork, who I believe is Tim Seeley, is featured on the packaging as well, and it's really nice. Great artwork, and unfortunately, I just don't think this figure captures it. Like, Cassie is an attractive character when drawn. I don't know that this figure quite qualifies as attractive. Her features just don't come across as well. She's got kind of a rounder chin. And she's got kind of like a mesh tank top, but here I guess they thought it would have been too much work to paint all the little squares on kind of the mesh or the net, so they just kind of painted her whole torso this kind of grayish color. It lacks a little bit of detail. Now I am really impressed with the Argyle socks; those look really good. But there have been a couple of Cassie Hack figures in the past, and they were brutal. So this one is a lot better than what we've got before. In fact, Fresh Monkey Fiction even had done a prior release not that long ago, only about a year ago before this figure had come out. They had included Cassie Hack in their prior line of kind of mishmashed heroes, which I think was called Amazing Heroes. And that figure was pretty rough looking. So this is an improvement. Maybe we'll get an even better Cassie Hack sometime down the line. But I am a fan of the character. I was kind of a mild fan of the comic book. I did collect it for several years. So this was a character that I wanted to pick up. And it's not a bad figure. It's just I wished it had been better. Because I have like zero complaints when it comes to the other figures in this collection. This one here just misses the mark a little bit. Now she does have an accessory, which is nice. So she's got a baseball bat with some nails in it. You'll see here that it says "Kiss It" on the bat. I guess you could kind of say the skirt is an accessory because it's a separate piece. I don't think it's removable in any way, but it is kind of like a floating piece that moves around a little bit. But not a bad figure. Another thing I should mention is all these figures come with Longbox Heroes display stands, which is nice. Because, yeah, there's nothing worse than your figures all falling down on your shelf like dominoes. So anytime a company gives you display stands, it's very much appreciated. Now, the last figure that I got from this line is the Goon from Eric Powell. Now, I've only ever read one Goon comic book, and it was okay, but I don't know. I thought it was maybe a little too goofy. The tone was a little bit off. I was kind of expecting it to be more like a Hellboy, which Hellboy can be funny too, but I think it does a better job balancing the dark with the humor. I thought Goon was just a little too much of a funny book, and I didn't bother to continue with it. But I love the look of the character. This guy with this cap, it looks very kind of 40s in design or something. And it's just a great look for this character, and he looks amazing in this toy. I just love it. You can see he's quite a bit bigger and bulkier than the other characters. The card art is beautiful. It's got Eric Powell's original artwork on there. And Goon is so big, he's just almost like bursting right off the card. It looks incredible. I love the yellow color and everything they used for it. On the back, you see the covers of a couple of different Goon comic books. And it's a really sharp looking figure. And this is why I think it's a little strange that Madman didn't come with an accessory, because Cassie has one. Madman definitely could have come with something, even his yo-yo or something. But I think there's been multiple things he's used, like even jetpacks, things like that. So he could have come with something. Now with the Goon, he's a larger figure, and he was the same price. So you could have applied the same logic that McFarlane used with Kilowog and said, well, this guy's more plastic, we're giving you the same price, so we're not going to give you any accessories. Goon actually has multiple accessories. He has this wrench, which is, cool. And then he's got this pipe, so you can fill his hands with weapons, and he still comes with his axe as well. So he's got a whole little arsenal here, which is pretty cool. And it's a great figure. I love this guy. So even though I know very little about the character himself, he's just a really cool looking figure. So even though I like all these guys to varying degrees, I think this is a fantastic Madman figure. Madman is just a little bit of a lackluster as far as design. Goon, I think he just hits all the marks. He's got a really cool look. It's a really cool figure. It translates the artwork very well. He's got fun accessories. He's perfect. So I'm really pleased with all these figures. And I definitely think I'm going to go back and get a few more, such as Grendel, another character I know very little about, but who looks very cool. So yeah, very happy with these things. But let's wrap things up. Okay, so that was my review of most of Wave 6 and 7 of McFarlane's DC Superpowers collection, as well as a couple of the random figures from Toy Otter and Fresh Monkey Fiction's Longbox Heroes collection. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and please leave me comments below. All that engagement really helps the channel. So yeah, if you do one or all of those things, that'd be great. Anyway, that's it for now. I've got a whole bunch more toys to talk about, so I'll be back with another video soon. I'll see you then. Ciao.